immigration and deportation rules, they've been rolled out. Now the legal worries, they're piling up. Our panel of attorneys joins us to separate fact from fiction. Also, the administration getting ready to announce its new travel ban. The first such ban struck down by the courts. Will the new one pass the legal test? Then the White House says that it wants to roll back some transgender protections because it's a states' rights issue. That was the same such argument as southern states used for slavery and segregation. Evening, everybody. Welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday night. And we begin this evening with the administration's new rules on immigration and deportations. And since it is legal night, we're going to take a look at the law and order issues. Now, here's how White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer describes it.
The message from this White House and from the DHS is that those people who are in this country and pose a threat to our public safety or have committed a crime will be the first to go.
Okay, one perspective, but here's another one. This is how the New York Times editorial board explains it, and I'm quoting. The targets now don't even have to be criminals. They could simply have been accused of a crime, that is, still presumed innocent, or have done something that makes an immigration agent believe that they might possibly face charges. The rules include a catch-all provision allowing immigration and customs enforcement officers or border patrol agents or local police officers, or for that matter, sheriff's deputies, to take in anyone they think could be a, quote, risk to public safety or national security. That is a recipe, they write, for policing abuses and racial profiling. Now, the new rules, they're right there on your screen. More deportations, faster deportations for criminals particularly, 10,000 new ICE agents, recruiting local police to help the feds, and that last rule aims to get rid of sanctuary cities where local authorities don't detain the undocumented on Washington's behalf. All right, let's bring in our panel right now to make some sense of all this. Jimmy Kasuris, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan. He sits on the board of directors of the New York City Criminal Bar Association, frequently lecturing at New York Law School, the bar associations in Queens and New York City, as well as Birmingham, England. And Karen Anderson, she joins us tonight, new face, practicing immigration law as the director of the Neighbors Link Community Law Practice. Mayo Bartlett, of course, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLC and former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office, and Bill Aaronwald, defense attorney and a former assistant U.S. attorney. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. All right, well, first of all, let's put a human face on this before we get into the legal, Karen, and that is there palpable fear this week with what's come out of Washington?
Absolutely. People are really frightened. They don't know what to expect next. I think immigrant communities in the area really feel like they're under siege, and they're really frightened. And unfortunately, they have good reason to be.
Speak to the reason you believe, because if you just listened to the press conference yesterday from Sean Spicer, it was, hey, listen, Obama got a lot of criticism because of all the people that he deported in his term. We're just merely taking the rules in the books and enforcing them. If you don't do anything wrong, if you don't commit a crime, you got nothing to worry about. I sense that may be not what people think is going to be the new reality.
Well, I think what Mr. Spicer said is inconsistent with the DHS memos that have been released, where it appears much more that the New York Times assessment, it comports much more with my understanding, having read the documents, that actually the government now has very wide power to deport and detain whoever it wants to, which is very different than what President Obama did.
So, and again, I don't want to obviously violate any confidences, yeah. So without putting names to it, give an idea of a family or of a person right now that doesn't know where they stand, that felt much differently, let's say before November, or certainly even before this week.
Sure. Well, I'll give you a great example of several families that I work with who, under the old administration, benefited from the policies that President Obama had put in place, that on the one hand were vigorously seeking enforcement and removal of people who are criminals, but at the same time had different enforcement priorities for people who had U.S. citizen children and had community ties and were a low risk. those priorities, now that those have gone away, there's people I know who had been reporting, who have lives here, who have U.S. children in this country. And I know because I spoke with ICE officers today, they said all that is gone. People have to be ready to go. I had that conversation like 6 hours ago. Wow. It's really frightening.
Bill, explain to people what a sanctuary city is, because if you talk to two people, you're going to get two different definitions.
Well, basically, a sanctuary city is one that generally is applying things or looking at things the way they were done under President Obama. If you were in the country even illegally, but you were not committing any crimes and you did not pose any serious threat, local law enforcement was just going to basically leave you alone. But the sanctuary cities now are going to be disappearing, because the one thing that the president has said is that those cities that will not cooperate with the federal program will lose federal funding. And then it becomes down to dollars and cents, and so they're putting the so-called sanctuary cities at risk. Now, Governor Cuomo just said the other day that New York will continue to be a sanctuary city, and he's willing to challenge
But
the
to clear up the confusion, because I think some people hear sanctuary city and they think some, like that creep in California went out and killed those people, that you get a pass for that, or almost a get-out-of-jail-free card. If you commit a serious felony before, currently, and in the future, and you're an illegal immigrant, you're not only prosecuted, but you're deported.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, it's at a point now where before a defendant is permitted to plead guilty to any crime, he must be advised on the record of the potential immigration consequences of his guilty plea. And the courts have said that a defendant who pleads guilty without being warned or being made aware of what the immigration consequences are can seek to have his guilty plea vacated. So with respect to sanctuary city, these sanctuary cities have never given sort of immunity or impunity to those who commit crimes. Anybody who commits a crime is always subject to deportation, but under certain rules and procedures.
But what they do is, if you're incarcerated in a sanctuary city, they're not honoring the holds that immigration places on you. So if you get arrested...
So explain what that means.
Okay, so you get arrested for a deportable offense. Immigration can put a hold on you. And what that means is, regardless of what happens to this case, this person does not have a right to be here, and we're putting a hold on him. So when the case is over, you keep him until we pick him up. And the sanctuary cities are refusing to hold these people until the feds come and get them. And that's a problem. So that they really do offer, you're right, no immunity, no impunity, but they offer far more in terms of not holding people and not facilitating what would otherwise be valid deportations, and that's the complaint.
Mayor, from my end, there's two things that, one on the immediate. God forbid I'm a victim of domestic abuse out there, where I would have called the cops before. If my immigration status is in question or what, I'm keeping my mouth shut. If I'm an eyewitness to a crime, I'm not going to come forward and help the police here solve a case here if it could mean that I'm going to be basically cuffed and stuffed and sent back to wherever I came from. I think there's that. But then, to me, the part where I think I could see some sheriff's deputy in Texas act a whole lot differently than some officer in Portchester. So my point is, it seems that, and it's going to be replete throughout this hour, we're creating different standards all depending on geography.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much interpretation left up to this, right?
That happens all the time, and if you stop and you really look at it, Bill talked about Padilla versus Kentucky, where the courts now are obligated to advise people of their immigration consequences. But if you look at marijuana, it's handled differently in virtually every state. Some states say it's legal, and the feds can still come in and arrest you, even if you own a state-sanctioned marijuana distribution center. Here, what we're talking about is it's no clear line for anybody who is not legally in the country. Now, to be clear, if you're not legally in the United States, you're subject to deportation anyway. It doesn't matter if you've committed any crime. So we're talking about prioritization of who's going to be deported. I can tell you that in Westchester County, certainly, I've had clients who were not legally in the United States, went to jail, and under one administration, the jail itself notified ICE. Now, I'm not aware of the jail not acknowledging ICE holds, but if they don't notify ICE, it's not feasible to believe that ICE is going to know or have the resources to come and get you. Then I've had people who've had misdemeanors where they're on probation for a very minor offense, petty larceny, and they've gone through 2 years and 11 months out of the 3 years of probation, and almost on the last day of probation, ICE comes into probation and deports them. So there are a host of different consequences here. In terms of a sanctuary city, my understanding of it is that basically you will not notify ICE. Your police are not obligated to act on behalf of the federal government to perform a service that ICE performs. That's where the difference, the separation between state and federal governments really comes into play.
The problem that I have is in terms of the racial profiling and in terms of just rounding people up for no reason. You really have an issue there, because if you arrest somebody for no reason because you think they're deportable and they wind up to be deportable, you're still going to deport them. Mm-hmm. They almost don't have a remedy. So the problem is that this can precipitate wholesale profiling, illegal arrests, illegal detentions, because that person, well, maybe he can sue you for illegal arrest, but he's going to have to do it, or she's going to have to do it from whatever country you send them to, because if you don't have a right to be here, you don't have a right to be here.
We saw that in a small scale in Arizona when they tried to apply their own, in effect, state regulation. I also have some practical questions, which is, before this came up, I assumed that wherever the native country of the person originated from, they had to take them back. That's not necessarily the case right now. So this week, you've got the new Secretary of State going down to Mexico to try and convince them to build a wall with their own money, which I would take bets on somebody that they're going to say, sign me up for that. But also that they're going to take everybody in. Moreover, why would they take somebody, let's say, that was eventually would go to Guatemala? Where do these people go? Do they go to detention centers theoretically and then just stay there?
Yeah, people can languish in detention centers for years.
Which are quite often for profit, so someone has a motive.
That's right.
Yeah, and you know, there's one thing I wanted to add to the sanctuary city issue, which is that there's a sense, I think, people have that people are concerned about sanctuary, that it's sort of this lawless thing and people, you know, communities are defying the law. But I think making a distinction between state criminal consequences and federal immigration consequences can actually be very valuable for public safety for the reason you said. It makes people trust law enforcement, makes people feel like they can, that they know the rules of the game that apply when they interact with the police or they go to court. And that makes everybody in the community trust the system and want to follow those rules, as opposed to going underground.
Are you more concerned today, that we saw this with the rollout of the travel ban to a certain degree, that this isn't really a fully formed and fully articulated plan, or that it's just so draconian?
Both. I'd say that my primary concern is that it's very draconian, but the related concern is that it also seems very ambitious, and particularly financially ambitious. These plans are going to require a lot of money to fully fund them. So a related concern I have, just dealing with, you know, my clients and the people in the communities I serve, is that there's a lot of fear about these things. Is it going to happen next week? Is it going to happen next month? And a lot of that, I think, depends on funding and sort of battles over policy that is just
in my
at some
world
remove.
here of dealing with the policies and the dollars and cents, not necessarily the law, where's the money coming from? But they've already basically signaled they're going to take the money from any legal aid funding that would be this, and this will go to hire, or at least begin to go to the funding of the 10,000+ agents. All right, a lot to get to this hour. Coming up next, new deportation rules, they're out, the new travel ban, that is next. Will the White House be able to get this one to pass legal muster? And I'll tell you, there's one big question that they're going to have to answer. Stay with us.